Welcome to this Droidcon talk session called Faster Feedback, Cut Gradle, Build Pipeline Times in Half. My name is James Cullimore. I'm a freelance software dev with nearly a decade of experience, specializing in Android development. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to this talk titled Hotfix Heaven, Why In-App Updates Are a Must.
Hi everyone. It's a lot of devs and gamers' dream to create their own game, but not many people set out to achieve said goal. Well, about 2 years ago, I set that goal for myself, and within a year, I managed to bring a game onto the market without much time or resources. Hi everyone. Most devs struggle to find the ideal work-life balance between a full-time job, family, friends, hobbies, freelancing, pets. It's hard, but you're not alone.
Hello, Android developers. I am Mohsen, and I'm thrilled to be wrapping up 2025 with a truly special episode. Today, I have an exciting interview with one of the active members of the Android community. We'll be discussing his personal story, uncovering the realities of the freelance lifestyle, and get his perspective on where the Android ecosystem is heading with KMP and Compose. But before we jump into the conversation, please take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and share it with your fellow Android enthusiasts. It really helps the channel. Let's get started. James, thanks for accepting my invitation. It's very honor and exciting for me to have you here on my channel. And first, let's introduce yourself and tell us where you are based, and then we will start.
Yeah, I wasn't. Thanks very much for having me here. Yeah, my name is James Cullimore. I'm an Android dev since nearly a decade now, and I'm based currently in Germany, but I'm originally Irish, so hence the accent that I can't get rid of. Yeah, I've been living here in Germany for about 15, 16 years, married with 2 kids, and yeah, started doing, like I said, Android development about 10 years ago. First, it was more of a hobby, sort of, like I was doing software development. But yeah, I was doing Android development then on the train first off, and then just kind of slowly switched over fully into that career role. Yeah.
First, I'd like to thank you especially for your special support and advice during the rough time I had when I was laid off and I was looking for a job. I think it was 1.5 years ago. And you did a great job as a community member coming to me and talk with me and somehow being so empathy and all the nice things you did somehow support me. And I will never forget that, to be honest, just as a very, very first thing to mention.
Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, I remember as clear as day. Because I don't put a lot of two and twos together when I meet certain people, and I looked at your profile and I was like, wait a minute, this guy doesn't need my help. And I remember seeing your profile, I remember saying that, and then I thought to myself, wait a minute, I know you from somewhere. And then I realized, yeah, you have probably one of the biggest YouTube channels on Android development. It's huge, and yeah, I'm glad everything worked out more so than anything. I think it didn't take long. I think the break probably did you a bit of good, and I've been seeing you now pretty much at every Droidcon, and yeah, you've been keeping yourself pretty busy, and I think you're doing really good. So
Yeah,
yeah.
you're one of the one of the most active Android community members, and you have lots of talks. We'll talk about them later. But you mentioned very brief about Android development, but I want to hear more details. How did you end up as an Android developer? Were you doing other software and then you learned about Android, or you directly jumped onto Android?
Yeah, trying to think where it started without dragging the story out too long. So I used to be for a long time a computer technician. So I was self-employed roughly about 8 to 10 years, basically hardware. So taking apart computers, fixing them, phones, computer consoles. And then something happened, like I moved to Germany, did that in Ireland, moved to Germany, kind of all went not as expected. And then I had a kind of couple of jobs, regular jobs around the place, working in an Irish bar, for example. And then someone offered me the opportunity for an apprenticeship as not a software developer, but as a network engineer originally. So I went into the interview and uh, did really well in that interview. Then they asked me if I had interest in software development, which I had zero experience in, like really nothing. Like they were asking me, we did a test together, and I completely horribly failed the test. But they came to me about a week later and said, "Yeah, we think you would be a good fit." And I was like, "Really? Okay." I was like, "Well, I have a big interest in that," and then I just jumped on board. That was a DNA sequencing company in Constance, and the apprenticeship went on for 3 years. Just after starting the apprenticeship, I moved away, but I didn't want to give up the apprenticeship. So I moved away about 2 hours train ride away. That means I was traveling every day, 4 hours on the train. And of course, I jumped in deep dive. Like I started with zero experience, and after a year, I had a lot more experience. And I didn't in that apprenticeship, I was doing full stack development. So web APIs, web full stack front end development with AngularJS and Angular 2 at the time, and then Spring Boot microservices with Java, and then a lot of Java embedded, but nothing mobile wise. So I wanted to have a look at, mobile development, and I had the choice between iOS and Android. iOS costed money. I was pretty much a student at that time, so I couldn't afford anything iOS wise, like a MacBook or any of those things, whereas Android was completely free at the time. So I went with Android and did several open source projects. One of them actually got a lot bigger than I expected. That was called Streaming Yorkie. And then, yeah, I spent nearly every 4 hour train drive every day just doing Android development. And then after the apprenticeship finished, then my very first job after the apprenticeship was as an Android developer, and it just kind of took off from there. Yeah, I worked at several different companies then over the years doing Android development, but also always doing something else on top, taking part on iOS, taking part in backend, embedded. Yeah. And then eventually then I decided to go into freelancing. Yeah, and then continued on the Android development there.
Yeah, we will catch up with that. But yeah, that's the somehow shared point between most of Android developers who start Android because iOS was expensive, they could not buy Mac, so they just jumped to the free world of Android.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that this happened, to be honest. I don't want to go back.
Yeah, well, I don't regret it. I mean, yeah, iOS has its upsides, but I'm actually grateful, and I do iOS development as well. Over the years, then I taught myself how to do iOS development, but I still have I was not a keen interest would be a wrong way of saying it. Like my heart still belongs to Android. That's why I got more involved in the community now because I wouldn't be where I was if I didn't have all of the things for available for free at the time. That's why actually I do a lot of open source work and community work because that's basically how I learned it at the start, which was a huge thing for me. Yeah.
Cool. Back to freelancing. You mentioned you have 2 kids and you have a family, and it means you need more security. I personally cannot think how to make it happen. I'm a bit interested, but I never tried it. And I somehow envy all the freelancers who had got to jump to the freelancing world. Give us some idea. How does it work as a freelancer, as an Android freelancer, and how you decide to jump to this world and how you maintain your life in this world?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that you mentioned is the security aspect. So obviously being a freelancer, there is no security. But what I found out as well that having a full-time job also doesn't necessarily offer you the same security. So I have been laid off because of companies downsizing or going bankrupt and things like that. So it's for me nearly the same amount as security as it would be freelancing. The only difference with freelancing is you're not just doing your dev work, you're then also doing your own sales, your own bookkeeping. So there's a lot more on top. That's the only, but it has a lot of benefits too. And I kind of delved in between it. So when I started doing freelancing, I didn't jump into it cold feet. Like I didn't jump into it without quitting my job. So I had a full-time job at first, and I was doing freelancing on the side in the evenings. which obviously was kind of hard with, like I said, with the wife and kids. So I would wait until the kids would be in bed, and I would do most of my work basically when my wife was asleep. So I had very little sleep myself. That's what I was sacrificing at first. But I was enjoying the work. And eventually, at a company that I was working with at the time, they actually went bankrupt. And I had an opportunity kind of land on my lap, which was a freelancing opportunity. And I decided to go with it. And that worked out for about a year, which was great. Of course, I learned a lot about freelancing in that year. And also, one of the biggest mistakes which you make, which is that you don't have what's called a single cash cow. That when the single contract ends, you're then left with nothing. And if you haven't prepared for it or have the next customer lined up or anything like that, then that's when things kind of go south. That happened. So I went back to full-time development, full-time, not freelancing, permanent placements then. I went back to a company I actually worked as a freelancer for and had then decided, okay, freelancing didn't work. So I was with the company then for about 6 months and I got an opportunity, a really, really big opportunity. And it was a freelancing opportunity. And I decided then, shit, I have to take it. Which was horrible because the team I left was it was probably the best team I've ever worked with. Um, so I was kind of raging to leave that, and I did not want to do that. But yeah, since then I jumped in, had this massive opportunity, which was huge for me, and I've been doing freelancing since, which is now 2, 3 years. And because of the first year of making all those mistakes, that's really helped. But yeah, you have to be willing to make sacrifices to go through it, and it is very difficult. Like I said, you're not just doing your 40 hours of development; you're also doing roughly 10 to 15 hours on top every week, doing sales, doing advertisement, communication, your bookkeeping, all these things. Yeah.
Great. At Droidcon, you had a very fantastic talk about how to cut Gradle build time in half. I don't want to talk about the talk. I will put the video link in description so people can go and watch it. But I'd like to know, how do you prepare for the talk, and how do you bear the pressure on stage? I want
Oh,
to see more developers on the stage sharing. That's just what we don't get.
yeah, I've actually been pushing a couple of developers as well. I managed to push Niall Scott, by the way, to do his first talk this year in Droidcon London, which I was really happy about because he gave a really, really good talk. Um, yeah, it was kind of random. So when I went to my first Droidcon Berlin, I had never planned on ever giving a talk. This was not something I would do. I'm not a very social person even. And my communication skills have also not necessarily been great over the years. But I was kind of inspired by a lot of the good speakers that I saw at Berlin. So like Nicole Turk and Ben Cadell, for example, they were huge. Ash Davies as well. All these top speakers that really gave me a positive impression. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to give it a whack. I'm going to put myself in an uncomfortable position and see what it does. You know. So I went to a couple of people and asked for some advice. And one of the particular people I asked was Ben Cadell. I approached him and I said, "Hey, give me some advice. I'm thinking about doing this. Well, what would you do?" And he gave me a couple bits of advice, two of which really stuck with me. One he said was the hero's journey. Do some research into the hero's journey. That is basically how you structure your whole storytelling process, which was great. I tried to take bits out of it. I didn't follow it fully, still don't, but it was still interesting to know, and it definitely does help structure talks. But before getting on stage, he says embrace the chaos. So there's this feeling of panic and chaos before stepping on a stage that you cannot get rid of. And the first few minutes of a talk as well, I'm incredibly nervous. But yeah, it's a great feeling. Having given the talk and then the feeling afterwards, when you get positive feedback, that's kind of what's a bit of addicting. Hence why after doing it the first time, yeah, I started doing it a few times more. Preparation for the talks themselves, the actual presentation has been very, very different. So the very first presentation, I spent way too much time on
Mhm.
prepping it, doing practice talks, and it's good to practice. But because I practiced so much that I didn't need my speaker notes. And it was a good thing too, because there was actually a technical failure. The first talk, the screens where the speaker notes would have been shown weren't working. So I was like, don't worry about it. I have it all in my head. Yeah, but yeah, lately I think the last few talks now there's been less time being invested into the preparation to it, which is kind of good because I don't want to spend too much on it, but it takes time. You need to practice it. You need to have a good feel for it, do the timings right to make sure that you're not. How is it when you're too fast? How is it when you're a bit too slow? Where should you take breaks? And my poor wife has to sit through the talk a few times before everyone else, at least once anyway. But yeah, she's very supportive too. But yeah, getting people in, doing practice talks helps. Yeah.
What's your most read resources that you refer to and go to maybe every day or every week, trying to catch up with the recent changes of the tech in
Oh,
Android development?
um, so I like reading a lot of blogs on Medium when I have the time, and I used to have a lot more time to read them. But more recently, what I've been really enjoying is because a lot of the videos are being released now on YouTube, is talks that I missed from Droidcon.
Mhm.
So I listen to them on 1.5 speed just to kind of make it a bit quicker. But I get a lot of things where I can pick up and research, and I tend to do this while doing some sport. So I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone. Um, but that's kind of one of the biggest ways where to keep up with the newest technologies and methods and stuff like that. I find obviously the Android documentation is great, but it's very bloated. Whereas if
Mhm.
you have a Medium article which is not too old, which kind of showcases stuff, that's great. But I like it. I prefer hands-on.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like one thing I saw recently that was using the camera view on Jetpack Compose. So
Mhm.
there's no actual good examples of it. Recently, Google have been doing some examples on it, but hasn't covered a lot of the use cases. I noticed it was missing, so I decided I'd get my hands dirty, and I just jumped in and added it to one of my projects that is using the camera view and Jetpack Compose, and decided to basically upgrade it. And I've now added it as well to an open source project, which I'm going to release very soon, to basically showcase it.
Mhm.
So I prefer just getting my hands a bit dirty and just seeing, like keeping all the libraries up to date, the newest, and just trying to see, what's the best practices using it.
Yeah, great. You also had an interesting session. I cannot say it was a talk, but it was kind of a session that people was gathering about finding work-life balance as a developer.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
found it very interesting because people were just talking and sharing their experience and how they struggle and how they found solution for it and where the idea came from first when you decide to do it. And I'm not sure if it was recorded, to be honest. I think that's something that people are gonna miss.
No, it wasn't recorded. It was
Yeah.
this year at Droidcon Berlin,
Hmm.
and it was a roundtable discussion. It was kind of one of the more newer
Hmm.
formats, which went really well. Yeah, and I think the name of the thing was Contribute, Struggle, Adjust, Repeat. And that's
Exactly. Yeah.
basically what I've been doing now the last 10 years nearly. So between like I have my full-time job, I'm married, I have two kids, I have a dog, I have my hobbies and I have my work. And the work takes a lot of time too. And then of course, as a dev, you're kind of expected to keep up with a lot of the newer stuff in your spare time. And I was doing things like open source contributions, working on my private projects. That's not something that I would highly recommend to everyone because it takes a lot of energy and people can quickly burn out. And it's kind of one of these things where I've come close to it several times. I thankfully haven't burnt out, but I have come close to it several times. And I speak with a lot of devs who have either had the same experiences, struggled with it, gave up then as well, even, or even had actually a burnout. And it's a very difficult topic to talk about. I have found a way that works for me over the last 10 years, and it's still working. And I still haven't burnt it. So as long as it's working for me, I decided, okay, well, maybe this bits of information could help other people, because I imagine there's a lot of people in my shoes, which are basically, they want to do more, but struggle to find the time, to find the motivation, to find the energy. And one of the biggest things which I push as well is to not ruin the important relationships. So obviously, the relationship with my kids and with my wife, they're very important to me. So I do reserve time for them every week to make sure, I'm always at my two sons' rugby training. There's very, very, very few exceptions. The weekends I try to keep completely free and spend with the family. And these are very important things that play a role in it. So it's a balance of trying to find the energy and motivation and not breaking things, and then your own mental health and physical health on top as well to keep going and keep doing it. That's kind of what inspired that talk or that roundtable discussion. And yeah, it's something I talk about a lot with other devs one-to-one. And that's kind of where it all came from. All these separate one-to-one talks I've had with devs with these very similar issues, where they've not necessarily come to me, but the discussion just kind of arose with, how do I do things? How do I spend the time doing my media markets, writing my open source projects, and it just kind of all came through that. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I really like to know okay. I'm also working from home all the time. So somehow the line between living and working is a bit blurry. So
Yeah.
you're one step between them. And you as a freelancer, I think that's even worse because you're always at home. You don't even go to office maybe once a week or something like that. So always at home.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line that, okay, that's it. I will close my laptop or turn off my PC and leave the desk, and that's it.
It's a hard one. Yeah, because especially as a freelancer, because every extra bit of time that you invest into it, you get out of it. I mean, if it's a 9 to 5 job, then you put in your hours and then you could technically stop. It might be a little bit easier. Not always. There are certain companies out there that expect more, but yeah. It's hard. Sometimes it's easier to draw the line. Sometimes it's harder. I think I always try and keep like a list of priorities. What are my main goals? What are the main things I want to do? And on top of all that list is obviously my wife and kids. My kids more so than my wife. Sorry, Betty. It is true.
That's true.
Yeah, I try to put them first and foremost in anything else, and spending time with them, valuable time. I only get very little of that every day, and it's in a very short time frame. So I try to then spend time with them, and then I'm free again, like free to decide whether I go back to work or, of course, then as well, I try to spend as many evenings as I can with my wife, away from the kids, that we have some private time too. But yeah, one thing that definitely helps, and I've tried a couple of different tips as well. So I'm very, very lucky. I built my house last year, but even before building my house, I used to always have a separate office room. So this is like my workplace. This is where I literally go to work and then leave. And I used to do a lot of gaming, which I don't do anymore. I used to game in here too, which was probably not a great idea. But yeah, having a separate domain space, a separate area in your house where you can enter to work and leave to work. And as well, some people put on certain clothes. Like I have my own work clothes when I can to when I'm at work. When I'm off work, I'll get changed, just like I would, years ago, so to speak. These things kind of help. But yeah, these boundaries they're very hard. So I don't succeed with that every day, unfortunately. I spend a lot of time in the evenings as well, doing work. But yeah, just how it is sometimes.
Yeah, I know. It's a bit hard. Having kid makes things a bit harder, but I agree.
Yeah.
I like to ask, what team setup do you like to work with? But first, I like to ask, as a freelancer, are you somehow a single person, single developer working on a task, or does it also come the chance to work with a team?
I think as a freelancer, it's more being a single dev, I find. But that's just me. So I know there's freelancers out there who work a lot with teams together as well. But a lot of my work tends to be alone, which I'm happy enough with. I don't like. I can't necessarily say I prefer being alone, but I'm quite happy being alone. You know, but I do like working with teams. There are certain uh, criteria when I look for contracts or jobs regardless of it's freelancing or not. One of the first things I look at, who's the team I'm working with? You know, a lot of the times I'll decide my contracts or jobs based on the team I'm working with, more than anything else. You know, if there's a team there where I feel like, oh, there's people there I can really learn from or really get along with, share the same values and the same mindset as I do, then that's something that I really like doing. One of the more recent projects, I had two developers who had a very, very unique look on Android, the same unique look I had on Android. And I just went, done deal. I'm working with yous. I didn't care about anything else. I was like, yeah, I am working with yous. You know, yeah, but it's a mixed bag. I haven't worked with any massive corporations. I've worked on teams where 24 of us have been working on projects on a single repo. But it's been a bit rare. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for being honest. And if you want to work with a team, do you prefer a team of all senior developers or a mix of senior and junior, and why?
Oh, preferably a mix. Um, Senior devs are great, as long as they're not too blindsided.
Mm,
Um, you won't have a junior dev who's very blindsided because they're trying to soak in as much information as possible. And a lot of the juniors that I worked with in the past, they'll always have something to teach you as well, which is very surprising for a lot of people, but it is true. Because they're so new and fresh into it, they may not know a lot about the legacy of, let's say, working with Java or XML views, but they could have, for example, the most best practice in Jetpack Compose, which you might not have yourself learned, you know. So they can offer great insight that way. And it also helps you when you try to teach someone, the learning effect it has on yourself is a lot better.
mhm,
So
mhm,
that's why I try to teach people where I can as well, because it's not just about them. It's how my own understanding to it as well. You know, but working with senior devs, yeah, is great. I find it's great for me when they have a very similar opinion on it. I've worked with a couple of devs in the past as well where they're very headstrong with their opinions and very hard to convince otherwise. And it's not wrong, you know, it's different. It's not something that appeals to me. So yeah, so
mhm,
I prefer
mhm,
like a
mhm.
mixed bag. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I also like a mix of junior, senior because they're not biased. They come with their own creative solutions, and that you, as a senior, might miss that. That's very, very
E-
interesting things to say.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
What is your advice for someone who wants to start Android development today?
As I said, don't. No, do. Um, yeah, I mean, if someone is great, the biggest thing I find is you have to be kind of passionate. Yeah, as long as you have that passion, then there's everything is driving for it. I mean, if you're only doing it for because it's, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's ever. I can't imagine Android ever being an Android ever being a cushiony job. Um, but yeah, I mean, any part of development that you would do, they have their upsides and downsides. Android being one of them. If they're interested in doing development, Android is great. I mean, you're carrying around your phone with you. You can develop a lot of things on it. You can develop games, develop tools. You can do pretty much, at the moment, pretty much anything you can do with a laptop on it, which is great. You're carrying around a mini computer with you. Like, that's why I think it's one of the great advantages of having it. One advice I would give, be open-minded, take in as much information as you can. Be kind. Like your soft skills, especially when it comes to communication, are your biggest thing, and everything else will follow. You know, you will learn over years. It's just a matter of spending time on it. So, being open-minded, being passionate, and being kind to other developers will bring you very far now, I find.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And if you want to go back to the time you start freelancing, is there something that you want to do or you would do to improve this career path?
Oh, back to when I was back to freelancing. So obviously, yeah, the first time around, knowing what I know now helps. So knowing that, it takes a lot more time and to not underestimate it. Um, yeah, and also networking. And networking is a huge thing when it comes to freelancing. Having a network, and I didn't have a network when I started. I have a bit more of a network now. Um, but yeah, that's definitely something I would recommend. Yeah.
Uh, I'm sure you have done lots of technical interviews and interviewed other developers who want to join the team. And what is the most, I can say, single predictive signal that tells you that a candidate is going to become a high performance member of an Android team? Let's say he is a junior and you want to hire him and you can see the further and how he interested it is.
The very first thing, and it always impresses me, is when a junior has done his research. And not just his research into a company, but a research into the person who's interviewing them.
Mhm,
It's
mhm,
always a great thing when someone comes in and you're talking to someone and they refer to, for example, your open source projects that they've looked into and can ask questions about it. That for me is always a big inclination of he's very passionate about this. He wants to know stuff. He's hungry for it. And anyone with that sort of hunger will always go for it, I find. So that's always the and it's something that I do them myself then on top. I'll try and do all this research in advance because it makes sense. If you're going to work anywhere, you have to do your research, especially with the people that you're working with. And yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest things for me.
Yeah, I also do the same because there are a bit of a stress for every interview, and I'm one of the most stressful people being
One of the most stressful
interviewed.
people.
Yeah, yeah, I answer crazy, random answers, which is very bad. I'm working on it. But
I
one
hate
thing
it as
that
well.
one thing that helps me a lot is, as you said, researching the company, researching the interviewers, and then understanding their background, guessing what they might ask, and things like that. It somehow suits me down because I put myself into the position very slowly, and then I catch up with the interview. And yeah,
No.
great, great. But nowadays, is there any technical book that you suggest a junior developer or Android developer to read?
A book.
Mhm,
I'm gonna be very honest with you. I haven't read any books. I'm not a book reader. I don't read any books. So I do
mhm,
know that there's a lot of books out there, like Manuel Vivo's what is it? It's his interview design. I can't remember the
mhm,
title of it. I know that one's very popular. I know Jae Wong Oom. I hope I'm saying his name right. I do apologize if I'm saying it wrong. I know that he's released a book as well, which is also very popular. And I think the Android Fundamentals from Chet Haas. These are books that I'm constantly seeing others mentioning. I think the last time I've ever read a book would have been nearly 20 years ago. I just don't read books. My wife is constantly pushing for it. I'm not able to, I don't think I'm able to sit down so long quietly and do it. I'm just incapable of it. I love reading blogs, like 5 to 10 minute blogs, because I can read it and then I'm finished and then I can move on.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
So there's no
Yeah,
books I
that's
can
true.
read.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
You?
Almost the same with me. Yeah, the Chattas book, I read half of it and I listened to the audio for the other half. But as you said, I prefer to read article. And nowadays, somehow AI making people a bit lazy because if I want to know something, I just go and ask Gemini or ChatGPT, hey, how should I do this? And it somehow give me some kind of article right to the point that I want instead of me searching Google or Medium for something.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting, interesting. So a step up from being junior, how do you define a senior developer? What's your definition of a developer as a senior?
Um, yeah, so a senior dev. So I have maybe a slightly different take to it. So a mid-level, because a lot of people take the years and what companies you've worked with and stuff like that. And I always found this a bit strange because there's always these different definitions. There's no true definition. So a senior dev for me is someone who's been has the equivalent of about 8 years of knowledge. Now,
Mhm.
he might only have 5 years experience, but if he has 8 years equivalent of knowledge, then for me he is a senior dev. And I only put a senior dev down to technical skills, not necessarily soft skills. So that means, they're able to do the work to a certain degree of quality, certain degree of best practices by
Mhm.
themselves.
Mhm.
So their
Mhm.
code reviews, for example, are a lot less time consuming compared to, let's say, someone who's a mid-level dev or a low-level dev or a junior dev, not low-level dev. Yeah. And I try not to look at that so much anymore, at least not the last 2, 3 years. So there are obviously steps up above senior devs, which is then like a staff or principal. And when you're in the larger companies, there's a different definition to that as well. But what I understood it was, and what I've seen from a lot of the staff and principal engineers that I've met, it's more about how you help others, how you teach, how you communicate, how you drive the team. And that's sort of the area where I've been kind of trying to jump into the last few years. I would start seeing myself now as it, but I've had no official title.
Cool. I like to ask about TDD or test-driven development. Do you see it as a myth for Android, or do you see the practical solution for Android?
Um, so I don't see that being fully practical with Android because it's not pushed from Android side. As long as it's not going to be pushed from Android side in any way or form, which it isn't, then it's never going to be taken over. So I originally came from a TDD background. The company I originally worked with in Constance, the DNA sequencing company, GATC Biotech it was called at the time before it got bought up. They did TDD. So I started out learning software development, TDD, and I hated it. I hated it. But looking back on it a few years later, I realized the massive benefit that it had. So obviously you want the most stable system that you can possibly design. And it's not just that the system itself is stable, but it confirms your own code, your own logic behind your code. It's a two-part way, like a re-revision of your own code when you're writing it to really ensure, is this what I'm actually wanting? It's like almost writing the specs for your app, but in the form of tests. So having learned TDD at the start, really helped me get involved with testing. I've always been one of the people who've been writing up tests or has the expertise in tests, and normally the one who overtakes it too, in almost every company that I ever landed in. But I never force any sort of TDD because, like I said, unfortunately, I'm not a huge fan of it on Android side because the setup is just not there for it. And I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the tests that I've seen over the last few years because they're kind of pointless. If I'm very honest. I see a lot of unit tests and they're testing things that really don't need to be tested. And I've gotten to the point now, I have been pushing tests in nearly every company, and I'm now coming to the point where I'm saying, do we really need tests? Which is a horrible thing to say when I think about it, but it's true. Do we really need tests in certain aspects? Because a lot of stuff I'm seeing is just pointless. I think Matthias Geisler, if I'm not mistaken, he is using AI and doing TDD with AI. That I find a little bit interesting. I don't want to move on to talk AI, but I think that's a bit interesting as to utilize AI to do it with you alongside like a coding partner maybe or something. But yeah, on Android, no, I'm still not seeing it. I mean, the biggest thing on Android at the moment is screenshot testing, which is great. It's a form of UI testing. Absolutely nothing to do with the stability of apps. God, I have so many apps on my phone at the moment where they're crashing nonstop. Um, yeah. And of course, TDD would help, but it's just, it takes so long as well. And people's definition, or not definition, understanding of it is sometimes misaligned. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. Last few months, I'm working on a feature which is changing on the fly, and I start thinking to add tests, but then I noticed that every test I add when the feature change is more maintenance problem, because then I have to double development, one applying the new feature, second fixing the test to fit with the new feature.
Yeah.
So at some point I said, okay, I will stop writing tests. I will make sure the feature works. I will test it roughly with myself, and then when everything cools down, then I start adding tests for functionality, as you said, not for every line.
Yeah.
That's you also mentioned something about AI, which is interesting for me, because people somehow try to increase the coverage, test coverage, and the number. And then they randomly put code into AI and ask it to generate tests for it. And it just, without knowing anything, it just try to cover line by line with different tests.
Yeah.
But recently, I'm reading a lot about writing tests and how you should test somehow your app business logic, your app functionality, not every line of code. So
Yes.
when a button is pressed and a user is logged in, that's what should be tested. Not when you press a button, a dialog shows up and the user have to enter something. Does it shows up? Does it doesn't show up? That's the whole interesting topic to discuss hours about. But yeah, I have not tried TDD with AI yet. I've seen lots of nice talks at Droidcon and other articles. I may give it a shot. That's also interesting.
Mm.
But as a freelancer, okay, I'm hired. I'm working on a project. I know tech devs, and I asked the product manager to give me, for example, 20% time to resolve tech devs. How does it work as a freelancer? You don't kind of own the project. You just jump into middle of the project at some point. And do you even try to solve the tech devs?
Oh,
And
God,
yeah, how does it
yeah.
work as a freelancer?
That's how you sell it. That's obviously a big part of the sales. So obviously, especially when you're a freelancer, you want to sell your work, and
Mhm.
obviously sell more work, and obviously work that you also want to do, let's say. So obviously, you don't want to, like in particular, I don't want to screw customers over. I don't want to generate work that's unnecessary. But I
Mhm.
do want to, because I take pride in my work, and I try to produce the highest quality in the quickest time that I can. And yeah, one of the biggest things, like I said, is getting rid of technical debt. So I always try to recommend it. And it's just a matter of how you sell it. So I'll take for one example at the moment, worked on a very, very small project for a very, very short amount of time. And it was basically just adding a new feature and cleaning up a few little tiny ticks. I was a lot quicker than I expected, which was
Mhm.
great. They were happy too. Um, and I made some suggestions to him then. I said, look, the app is still using some Java. It would make it more attractive if it was Kotlin. It doesn't take long to migrate from Kotlin. This is really something that can be very straightforward. And I said as well, considering the app is so small, you can also change to Compose. And I said, when you do this, you're making your app more attractive for a dev to come in who's not a
Mhm.
freelancer.
Mhm.
For example, you're trying to hire a dev. I said, it's not very attractive to try and hire a dev for a Java legacy project with XML in it. It is very attractive when you say it's the most modern that you can get it at the moment, Kotlin and Compose. That's one selling point. There are, of course, other selling points which you kind of push off of, which is saying, right, there are some performance gains that you would get by changing over stability gains too. I mean, a lot of the XML and Java stuff, unfortunately, were always done incorrectly. And doing a refactoring of Kotlin to Compose, you can correct those at the very least, making the app a bit more stable. There's the chance to do that. Um, so yeah, there are some of the selling points that I would normally try to give off. Same goes for the likes of any security aspects or accessibility aspects, especially when you look at the market at the moment and you say, right, well, I'm in a banking app. Obviously, security is a massive thing. So I would be trying to sell it to them. But if it's an app where it's like, yeah, I mean, straightforward stuff. Now, I would suggest to them as well, look, some basic security is fine. I wouldn't invest too much time into it. You don't need it. But I would say then, accessibility might be a big thing. You've got a lot of apps users who, accessibility is a big thing. And there was changes this year to the Accessibility Act. I think it was in August 2025, which is going to affect a lot of bigger companies. And over the next year or two, it's going to slowly affect the smaller companies. So that's something that's got to be pushed in too. And you're saying, well, look, considering we're doing accessibility, we could also do this on top to cover the technical debt. There's always these sort of selling points that you can always bring in. Yeah.
Great. Have you done any KMP or CMP project as a freelancer? And how do you see the future of this aspect? Are we going to have write once and use it in, I don't know, desktop, Android, iOS, web, or you see it as too good to be true?
I don't see it as too good of a job. I mean, it's gotten really stable at the moment. So I find it very promising. I find it very, very promising. I find it a lot more promising than React or Flutter. I was a little bit surprised as to how successful Flutter was or is, if I'm being very, very honest. I did do React development for a year or two. Not a huge fan of it, but it worked. But I wasn't a big fan of platform then after that. I decided to stick native. And then KMP and CMP came along and I was like, okay, this is, taking pretty much native on Android. You're not changing too much, and this could be good for iOS. So I've done a few very, very small hobby projects starting out with it, just to sort of get my, the feeling of how it is. And I've been doing that every few months because it's been changing. And I'm following in certain people who are involved in KMP, like John O'Reilly. He's a great, obviously being also an Irish dev as well, but he's also a great example in KMP area and gives talks about it too, which is great for me to be able to follow. And yeah, especially with the likes of iOS interoperability. So yeah, I'm potentially going to be working on a project very soon, which is KMP CMP, which is great, which I'd like to get my hands more on. I would like to get more involved. I think mobile, it has massive potential. I think it has the potential to, it won't extinguish React and Flutter. But I can see React definitely going a lot further down. And I could see maybe Flutter having a very small percentage of the market. And I could see KMP, CMP having a massive slice of the pie. When it comes to likes of desktop and web has so many different frameworks. And I've used so many of them. I tend to stick to vanilla. I'm not even using JavaScript anymore. I'm starting to not use JavaScript. I'm starting to use HTML, CSS, trying to push that, and not even any frameworks. And that for me on web, perfect. Of course, if you need some back-end logic, it gets a little more difficult then. I don't know if KMP or CMP is going to really help with that. And I haven't touched much desktop. Whenever I do any sort of desktop stuff, I tend to just do bash scripts. I'm very old-fashioned that way. I don't care about a UI on my desktop. I care about it working. I care about it doing other things. So I've written hundreds of bash scripts to do loads of different things. And I don't have many apps installed. The only desktop applications I have installed tend to be the IDEs and the browser. That's about it. I don't use much else. I think desktop is kind of slowly dying off, maybe. So I wouldn't even consider that, you know. Yeah. And still, I think under the hood, is it not still using JSwing in some way? Like a framework? I mean, this is, sorry about the cursor, but 30 years old where I did JSwing about 8, 9 years ago. It was terrible. Probably one of the worst frameworks I worked with. Yeah.
Cool. Another question is, let's say you want to start a project I think it happens a lot as a freelancer. You join a company who wants to start something. Which one of these tech you use, Coin or Dagger or Hilt for dependency injection? And almost how and why?
I tend to avoid it at first altogether.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a couple of projects with Dagger, and I've done a couple of projects with Coin. I prefer Coin to Dagger because obviously it's a bit more Kotlin oriented and stuff like that. I, however, prefer on top of both of them, none of either. I prefer going boilerplate. And a lot of people question that because obviously, I've been working for several years now and I've tried them all out and I think they're great. And the boilerplate code and the dependency injection that comes with it has its advantages, but also has its disadvantages. So especially with Hilt, I found with Dagger and Hilt, I worked on it with a company where I was working with more junior devs than senior devs. And they all struggled with Dagger and Hilt, completely struggled with it. They couldn't figure out how it worked. They were constantly making mistakes. They couldn't debug it easily. And then I made the decision then, get rid of it. Get rid of it, take it out, add in your boilerplate code. Let's make things a lot simpler. Just keep it simple. And it
Mm-hmm.
really helped the team. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone was a lot happier after that. Yes, there was more boilerplate code, and yes, there was minor performance issues that weren't necessary. We didn't need them. Like we didn't need the gains of a dependency injection framework. We didn't need it at the time. So therefore, keep it out. You should only really bring it in when you find that the benefits outweigh the negatives. If you have a massive app, like let's say, take like the likes of Reddit team or Slack teams and stuff like that. I can't imagine that they are not using it. I would be very surprised if they were not using it, for multitude of reasons. But they also have a senior team on top that can either teach the juniors a lot better than I could, or, they have their extra tools on top. A lot of the smaller teams and apps that I work with, they don't have that benefit. So therefore, I leave it out.
Yeah, interesting point of view. I kind of like that. It really depends on project and team size. What about concurrency? And do you suggest RxJava or coroutine?
Oh, coroutines, definitely.
Yeah, it was obvious. This one could be
Yeah.
harder. What about architecture? Do you suggest MVVM or MVI or anything else?
So, like, I've worked with all the different architectures. I've worked with MVP, MVC, MVVM, MVI, and then also iOS has their own specific ones like Viper.
Mhm.
And then for a long time, I was very focused on clean architecture, likes of using, use cases with repositories and stuff like that. And then on nearly every project, we had in some way or form a discrepancy or issues or misunderstandings, misalignments to the point where I disregarded it all. So obviously with Jetpack Compose and how everything is doing it, they have it very MVVMI orientated. It's not really fully MVVM. It's not really fully MVI. It's more MVI than MVVM. But yeah, I don't concentrate on the architecture at all anymore,
Mhm.
especially with Jack Macos. That kind of gave that little bit of a nudge to ignore it now. So you have your view models, you have your views, and you have your data models and stuff like this. My biggest thing I look at is keeping it simple. Keep it as simple as possible. Keep it as understandable as possible. If you don't require use cases, don't use use cases. Don't over-engineer.
Mhm.
At the moment, we're having less of a need for massive amounts of view models. Great. View models now are getting a little bit bigger with it, but that's okay. Just try and keep it simple. Try and extract it where you can. Try and keep your code simple. And I follow the practices preached from Google. Now they're preaching like MVI, but I don't push it. It's not how it used to be like 5, 10 years ago, where you really had to like have your model view controller and your presenter, or you definitely had for every view you had to have your view model, and for every view model you had your models. It's not really like that anymore, I find, and I'm not pushing it. And I know that's kind of going against the stream. I know that there's a lot of people out there who are pushing for clean architecture and stuff like this, but I just the one thing I push for is simplicity. I want to be able to show my code to a junior dev and him to be able to just take it off and go ahead and work with it. That's always my goal. Like, regardless of how big the app is.
What is your approach toward AI and all this new concept of vibe coding? Do you encourage that? Do you even do that? How does it work for you?
Like I use it. Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag. So I have a lot of devs who I would see sort of on my level, seniority wise and stuff, and a lot of them are not happy with it and think vibe coding is terrible. Um, I was very skeptical. I'm using it, like obviously ChatGPT is great for information, for narrowing it down. Don't trust it completely, always take it with a pinch of salt and make sure to do your research to back it up. But I find it did speed things up. It speed up the research, speed up a lot of other different things with it. And then came along the coding agents, for the likes of vibe coding and stuff. That's something I was very skeptical of. So yeah, I said one day, you know what? I'm going to give Junie a whack. Junie was one of the first I tried. I thought it was one of the more promising ones from them all. It was the first agent I actually tried. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I think within the first week of using it, and obviously, it's not a senior dev. I would just say it's mid-level dev. Decent, not bad. You have to correct certain things. Sometimes it'll go completely off track. You know. But yeah, I tried it out. I was really happy with it, and I bought the Ultimate Edition, which is something I don't do very often. I don't like paying for tools. I love free tools, so it's very rare that I would pay for a tool. Yeah, and I went out and bought the Ultimate Edition. I was like, yep, I'm sold. I said, this is brilliant for me, and I'm using it for nearly all of my side projects. Uh, yes, the quality of my code has dropped on my side projects. But the speed is immense. I'm getting now a lot more time to do things that I didn't get a chance to do before. So one project I'm working on at the moment is with my two kids. We're actually sitting here on the weekends sometimes, and we're actually programming a game together. And we're doing it on Android at the moment. And it's open source, so it's called Don't Go to Bed. And so we're sitting here, the three of us, and we're doing like the character design and doing up the images. We're using like all AI tools that we can find because we want to speed it up. And they're not interested in the programming bit. They're interested in getting the game up and running. And I'm interested in getting the AI agents up and running to do it correctly. So yeah, I'm actually surprised at how far we've got so far. Junie has done, I would say, maybe 90% of the coding for the app. And it's working. And yeah, they're happy. They're happy designing it, happy playing it. We're having fun while we're doing it. So I think that's when you take things like that, then it's worth it. So yeah, I find it promising. I still don't think people say it's going to ruin the industry or take our jobs. No, it is going to change everything. Things will change, but we're still going to be needed. The market will have dips and then it'll come back again. This stuff like this happened the last 30 years. Happens nearly every 10 years. So yeah. Yeah, I haven't tried out many other coding agents. I do follow people who do talk a lot about it. So there is one of the coding with the Italians, Ivan Morgillo, I think I'm saying his name correctly. He posts a lot about coding agents on LinkedIn. So I'm kind of waiting for a prime opportunity to catch him live in person and basically like shake him and say, "Hey, teach me everything you know." Yeah. What's yours? But like, how do you find it?
I somehow follow you. I see it as a kid with a huge power, which you should know what you're asking.
Yeah.
So the way of prompting is somehow affecting it a lot.
Yeah.
What I don't like is that it's not somehow, whenever you ask the same thing, it may do different thing. That's not a bit trustworthy. But I was discussing something similar with my colleague, and he said, okay, it's exactly the same with the human. If you ask him today to do something, he may do it differently from tomorrow.
Exactly.
But in the end, the way I see it is like the day that computer came to the world and people were afraid to lose their jobs. But then those who were computer experts somehow found more job and get paid more because companies wanted them to do it. So I say the same about AI. If you learn to use it properly, somehow be more effective and improve your performance using AI, then why not? Companies gonna love it, and they're gonna hire you. It's not gonna replace you at some point because someone should write those prompts. At least someone should be able to read what they're generating. Yeah, that's how I see it. Interesting. Is there any other tool other than Android Studio that you use day by day as your development tools?
Oh yeah, I use a lot of them. So I have like bookmarked. If I can go through them, like Android Studio, probably the one I use the most. The ones I use on top of that will be Visual Studio Code, Xcode, WebStorm, and IntelliJ. They're my lineup of IDEs I have in my toolbar. So yeah, I used to use pretty much only Android Studio and Visual Code and even Notepad++. Very old school for web development and bash script writing and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm using sort of IntelliJ a lot of because I bought the Ultimate Edition a few years ago for the JetBrains IDEs. So I'm trying to use them, and I missed out on one of the opportunities where they had an IDE specific for KMP. I can't remember what it was called. Particular name to it.
I know which one you mean.
Yeah, they like it only was out for about a year and then they discontinued it. But yeah, I missed out on an opportunity. But yeah, I'm starting to use more and more of JetBrains products, and I'm liking them. Obviously, Android Studio is based off it, so I like Android Studio. Yeah, they're the main ones I go to. Xcode would be on the last of my list. I try to avoid it where I can, but obviously, if I'm doing iOS development, you can't avoid it. I really don't like Xcode.
It was called Fleet, the IDE. Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to try that out, and I never got around to it. I just kind of
give it a shot. When JetBrains somehow demo how two developers can work together on the same project, and then it was interesting for me to give it a shot. But now it's the same functionality added to IntelliJ and all other IDs from JetBrains, and they're doing a great job. Everyone loves them. So yeah, great.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with it. Yeah, I'm quite happy with it.
You also contribute a lot to open source project. So how does it work? Is there any specific project that you are very dedicated into and you like to talk about?
Oh, dedicated to a specific one? Not necessarily. So I've made a lot of my own open source projects and kind of used it a bit more of a portfolio on one side. So anytime I try to do something, I try to get multiple benefits out of it in some way or form. Obviously, the learning effect is huge. When you get your hands dirty on a project and you open source it, you're kind of publishing, look, this is what I'm doing. Even if it's wrong, there's nothing wrong with doing wrong coding. I mean, if you look at some of my first open source projects, they were done horribly. But yeah, I think one of the biggest ones I dedicated a lot of my time to at the start was streaming Yorkie, because it was one of the first things I did and it took off a lot more than I expected. So when I released the app onto the market, I didn't want to just do an open source. I wanted to actually bring it onto the market. I wanted to get that learning experience, bringing an app onto the market. And I was expecting maybe like 100 downloads, if that, I wasn't expecting any more than that. And then I had about 15,000 downloads and roughly about 1,200 active users monthly. It was a lot more than what I expected. So obviously in my spare time, I dedicated a lot of time, to new features, trying to improve it. And then eventually the API from Twitch got changed and kind of everything went downhill very quickly. So I quickly took it off the market. But yeah, I mean, things that have been taking my interest at the moment is a few things. So I've been helping out Sergio with his composable preview scanner from Sergio Sastre. So because I've been using it a lot and it's open source and I like that. And I gave him some feedback and tried to help him out with things like that, which was great. And I'm very happy to have been able to do that. And it's very rare that I get a chance to work on an open source project that I like, that I actually want to contribute to. I tend to do my own ones. Like, for example, I've done an Android security training open source project recently, which takes the top 10 topics of security in Android, and it's a hands-on approach. So there's like a vulnerable app and a secure app, and you do basically a comparison. So you install the vulnerable app and you actually try to hack it, like use tools to peek into it, like Frida, try and reverse engineer the APK and see what it looks like inside. And then you'll take the secure app and do the exact same thing, and you'll see like how harder it is, so that was kind of something that I've done recently. And obviously with my boys, the Don't Go to Bed, which is also open source, something I'm working on as well. And on the odd occasion, yeah, like I have certain projects where I'll use as examples as a portfolio. Like I'll be updating my Wi-Fi wizard repo very soon to showcase Jetpack Compose with the camera preview, which is something I mentioned earlier as well. Yeah, and I'm probably going to write a little blog post about it and do a few LinkedIn posts about it too. And, yeah, things like that add to the portfolio then as well, showcases kind of the experiences that I have.
Yeah, you're recently contributing a lot with the Droidcon Academy. How does it work? When did you decide to jump into this academy?
Yeah, so I can't remember how it happened. I got approached at Droidcon by the Droidcon team, and they said to me, would you like to contribute? And I was like, yeah, of course. Huge fan of Droidcon and everything they're doing. I like Greg, and I'm consider him a friend, and I have a lot of speakers who I'm friends with. So for me, going to this Droidcon is a huge thing for me. So obviously, any way I can help out is great. And yeah, they said, we're looking to do courses, and I was like, yeah, this is for me a learning experience too. I've done video editing in the past, and some video tutorials would be great. So that's the first thing I did was a video tutorial, and I think I did all right. I didn't do too bad. I think I actually did a talk about it then afterwards. I think it was the in-app updates. And it was shortly afterwards is what I did my first Droidcon talk about as well. But yeah, it was just showcasing how you do in-app updates, how you integrated some extra benefit things on top, like using Firebase Remote Config instead of the Google API, which I'm not a huge fan of using. And yeah, then it just we finished it, and they said, yeah, would you like to do another one? This time in like an ebook format. Like, yeah, cool, let's do it. And I just kept going. So I think I did three things altogether. I did the first one was the in-app updates in a video format, a master lab course sort of thing. Not a master lab course, it's like a smaller course. And then I did an ebook about testing with Espresso. So an Espresso cheat sheet. So everything to do with Espresso testing on Android. And then the last thing I did was everything to do with retrofit. So everything revolving around retrofit. How to set it up, how to utilize it with Coin, with Hilt, all the extra little benefits you get it with, using it with Moshi, using it with JSON, using it with Kotlin serialization. All the different examples that you really get the most out of it. Yeah. And I tend, because it takes a bit of time, and for me, it was always great whenever a contract ended and I was looking for then my next contract, I would also at the same time ping the Droidcon Academy and say, hey, I've got available time now for something that we already kind of planned. Now is a great time for me to do it as a filler. I'm not working as so much to do it, and it was a great change of pace, change of work in between contracts. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. I'd like to say thank you a lot for joining me. And it was such a great talk. I really enjoyed it. I hope everyone else also enjoyed it, watching or listening to it. And I hope people can reach you and get in touch with you if they have anything to ask or communicate.
So I'm on a lot of different Slack channels, per email, my website. LinkedIn tends to be the only one social platform I'm on. But I'm also very, like I have no problem handing out my mobile number to certain people. My email address is the best way to reach me, and Slack. Discord as well. I'm up on Discord. I have a couple of servers that how would you say, maintain. Yeah, I can send all them details over to you if you want.
Yeah, please share. I will put into the video description. And thank you a lot. And
Yeah, thank you too. I
yeah,
mean,
thanks,
you're going through
people.
all this work here now.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Please take a moment to subscribe and like this video and share it with your fellow Android enthusiasts if you really liked it. And this is what I do on this channel. So find people who are doing great in the community and then just ask them crazy questions. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.